Shabbat and major festivals, when we refrain from a host of petitionary prayers, as we take rest on these days, we give God rest as well. But the one prayer that always stays, the one ask we always have, is the prayer for peace, page 216. Let there be peace, grant goodness, blessing, and grace, constancy and compassion to us and all Israel, your people. Avinu, bless and unite all human beings in the light of your presence, for your light has shown us a holy path for living. Devotion to love, generosity, blessedness, mercy, life, and peace. In your goodness, bless your people Israel with peace at all times. Let us and the whole family of Israel be remembered and inscribed in the book of life. May it be a life of goodness, blessing, and prosperity. May it be a life of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom. Now continue on page 223 with Avinu Malkeinu as we read alternatively from Hebrew to English. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu Chatenu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you. Avinu Malkeinu Chamol Aleinu Ve'al Aleinu V'Tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Avinu Malkeinu Kelev Dera V'Chera V'Ra'ah Ma'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Kol Tsar U'Mashtin Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu Kadvenu B'Sefer Chayim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives, well lived. Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Avinu Malkeinu Chanenu Vanenu Ki'en Banu Ma'asim Osei Manu Tzedakah V'Chesed V'Hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love. Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kol Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu,
we have not been on live stream up until just a little while ago. And so first I want to apologize for that. It's not a matter of fault. Sometimes it just kind of is. But also know that the service has been recorded all the way through, so you can go back. We are not going to go back from the beginning of the service at this point, but you can go back to the beginning of the service and see the part that you had missed. Another sign that we are better off when we're in person than virtual, a message from the Rabbono Shalom, the Master of the Universe, that God willing we'll get back to that state of being as the year moves on. But right now we are going to start our Torah service, moving from the prayer, what our words are to God, from God's words to us, page 227. Ein kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kamahasecha malachutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha b'kol dor v'hador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amahu yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Av harachamim heitiv avirtzon ha'et Zion Tivneh chomot Yerushalayim Tivneh chomot Yerushalayim Ki v'cha levad batachnu Melech el ram v'nisa Adon olamim. Continue on page 228. Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai ha'gedulah v'ha'gedulah v'ha'tiferet v'ha'netzach v'ha'or Tichol ha'shamayim u'ba'aretz Tichol ha'shamayim u'ba'aretz Lecha Adonai reading for this Rosh Hashanah morning is from the book of Bereshit, the book of Genesis, and just a couple of quick comments about it. And it seems particularly timely, particularly in lieu, as you will see, from the work of our guest speaker this morning. So this is the parsha which Isaac is born, and there is conflict immediately. There is dysfunction in the family between Sarah and her son Yitzhak in opposition to Hagar and Ishmael. And ultimately Hagar and Ishmael are sent out in somewhat, I would say, challenging and troubling circumstances. And yet God ultimately provides protection for them as they are sent out, and the promise that a great nation will be made of Ishmael as well. It is the kind of conflict that the Torah does not shy away from, that the Torah confronts, which compels us to confront conflict as well, and the importance of doing so in a way that resolves conflict, that doesn't demonize, and so some vital lessons to be learned from that, and something to take with us in these troubled times in which we now live. We begin with Torah blessings.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Kumi se'er anahar, aziki et yadak, ki lagoy gadol asimenu, vayivkach Elohim et eineha, atera ber mayim, vatelech v'timlaed achimad mayim, vatash get anahar, Vayehi Elohim et anahar vayigdol, Vayeshev Amibahar vayihira vakashet, Vayeshev Amibar paran, V'tikeflo imo, Isha me'eretz Mitzrayim.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
It's now the time in our service when we think about those who can't be with us due to illness. We wish them refuah shlema, rufat hanefesh, rufat hagufa, complete healing, a healing in both spirit and body. On page 244 is the Mishabara prayer, the blessing of healing. I ask those either to keep the names of those in need of a blessing of healing in your heart, or if there's a place to put it on a chat room, you're welcome to do that as well. Mishabara, page 244. The Torah is wrapped, we recite the Zot HaTorah, page 246.
זאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, על פי אדוני ביד משה. לי 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 לי
Torah for this Rosh Hashanah morning is from the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah, I have to concede, is a favorite prophet of mine, and I particularly, it's unfortunate, it's attributed mostly that he is a prophet of admonishment, and certainly he does his share, and as it turns out, he was right. If you all don't change your ways, you are going to be driven into exile and your temple destroyed, and lo and behold, we did not change our ways, and we were driven into exile, and our temple was destroyed. but he also offers words of consolation. And his message is a very important one, that while ritual is not unimportant, ritual matters and ritual has meaning, it is meaningless unless we go out and treat other people the way they ought to be treated. If we don't do that, then all ritual becomes empty. We begin with the blessing before the Haftorah on page 247. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai haboker b'torah u'Moshe abdo Yisrael amo u'v'nviei ha'emet b'tzedek. Our Haftorah.
And there is hope for your future. Thus said the Eternal, a people, survivors of the sword, gained grace in the wilderness. Long ago, when Israel was on its journey home, the Eternal appeared and said, "With an everlasting love I have loved you. Indeed, with a love that is faithful I draw you near. Once more I will build you up. Young maiden Israel, you will be made anew. Once more you will take up your dreams in hand and join in the dance of the joyous. Once again, you will plant vines on Samaria's hills, and the planters will live to enjoy them. For a day is coming when watchmen will announce in the hills of Ephraim, 'Arise and let us go up to Zion, to the Eternal our God.' For thus said the Eternal, cry out in joy for Jacob, cry out in praise over the pinnacle of the nations. Sing and shout and say with voices raised, Eternal, save your people, the remnants of Israel. I am here to bring them back from the land of the north, to gather them from the ends of the earth, the blind and the lame among them, women who are pregnant along with birthing mothers. They shall return here, a great community. With weeping they will come. With compassion I will guide them. I will bring them on a smooth path to brooks of water. They will not falter, for I have become like a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Nations hear the word of the Eternal, declare in it the distant islands, and say, the one who scattered Israel will gather them in, and guard them as a shepherd the flock. For the Eternal has redeemed Jacob, and saved him from hands stronger than his own. Happy their song when they reach the summit of Zion and bask in the glow of divine generosity. Grain, wine, oil, sheep, and cattle. They will be like a well-watered garden through and through, never again to languish. Then maidens will dance with delight, the young and their elders together. Their grief I will turn into bliss. I will comfort them and gladden them in their time of sorrow. The priests will have their fill of fatness, and my people, my bountiful goodness, declares the Eternal. Thus said the Eternal, a voice is heard in Ramah, wailing bitter weeping, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children, for they are gone. Thus said the Eternal, keep your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for your labor shall have its reward, declares the Eternal. They shall return from the enemy's land, and there is hope for your future, declares the Eternal. Your children shall return to their land. How I hear Ephraim lamenting. You have disciplined me like a wild calf. I have been disciplined. Help me return, and I will return. For you are my eternal God. Now that I have turned back, I am filled with sorrow. Now that I am made aware, I strike my thigh in remorse. Ashamed and humiliated, I carry the disgrace of my early life. Truly, Ephraim is my precious child, my delight, and though I speak against him, I remember him with tenderness. That is why my heart yearns for him. I will receive him back in love, declares the Eternal.
continue with the blessings after the Haftorah, page 258. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zorko haolamim sadik b'kol hadorot ha'el haneman ha'omer v'yaseh ha'mdaber m'kayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek neman atahu Adonai Eloheinu b'nemanim devarecha v'davarecha midvarecha achor leyashuv rekam ki hamelech neman v'rachaman atah Baruch atah Adonai El aneman bechol devarav Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu v'la uvat nefesh toshia b'mheira v'yameinu Baruch atah Adonai v'sameach Tzion b'vanecha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu be'elahu hanavi abdecha v'malchut beit David mishichecha b'mheira yavo v'yagel libeinu al kiso lo yeshev zar V'lo yinchalu od acherim et gavodo. Ki v'shem kodsheka nishbata lo shelo yikbed nero le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Magen David. Al haTorah v'al havodah v'al anvim v'al yom haShabbat hazeh v'al yom hazikaron hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu l'kedusha v'limecha l'kavod v'tifaret. Ahakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed yiracha emet v'kayam lad Baruch atah Adonai melech hakol haaretz mekadesh haShabbat v'Yisrael v'yom hazikaron. It has become our tradition, actually for many years now here at Kol Ami, to welcome in a guest speaker, a prominent member of the broader community, which we think helps us connect to broader community as well. In the past, we've had leaders from the Muslim community, from the African American community, from the queer community, prominent women clergy, all of which has brought a wealth of information and connection to us. Our speaker, our highly distinguished speaker, joins these ranks, and we're thrilled to have him here this morning. Ambassador Allan Katz was the ambassador to Portugal from March of 2010 through August of 2013. He came back here and became a distinguished professor at UMKC until 2019, and in 2019 he joined the faculty of William & Jewell as a distinguished professor. I think he's best known here in town as the founder and CEO of the NGO American Public Square, which brings together non-like-minded people to engage in civil, fact-based dialogue about polarizing issues. They are the primary convener in Kansas City over pressing public issues. And I can only add to this that I know that in the highest form of compliment that there are speakers that are brought in for American Public Square events with whom I disagree with vehemently and who I find at times downright annoying. I think that's a good sign, not a bad sign. Ambassador Katz is a frequent speaker and moderator on civic engagement, civility, American politics, and development in Europe. At one time in Florida, he was the Assistant Insurance Commissioner for the state and also the Assistant State Treasurer. If we're looking for a new treasurer, who knows? I think our budgets are comparable, I'm sure. Ambassador Katz has also been active on issues of climate change with the Environmental Defense Fund and the Florida Wildlife Federation Fund. They've honored him in the past with the Champion for Climate Change Award, a vital issue in these times we now face. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome Ambassador Allan Katz.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. When I began writing this talk several weeks ago, my sister, who introduced me to Kol Ami, Joanne, encouraged me to make it hopeful. And at this point in time, it's sort of a difficult assignment, but I began thinking about time, how we measure it, and how fleeting it can be. I remember as a child growing up that my parents always talked about the high holidays in terms of, are they early this year? Are they late this year? How do we sort of schedule our fall life around it? As children, of course, we always hoped they would be on school days so we could miss the schools, and always found it disappointing when we had to give up a precious weekend for the holidays. But as we now move into, but it was always a marker for us as Jews, as the beginning of something different, the beginning of a new beginning, if you will. But now, you know, time is passing in a way it's kind of hard to keep track of the days. I don't know about you, but we've been doing this for 6 months, and some days I'm not sure if it's Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. And there really is no end in sight. It all seems like the same after a while. And just as we always used to mark our fall, our beginning when the high holidays occurred, now it seems like maybe we should make this span of time that we are living through have some special meaning. So many people are suffering in this time, physically, economically, socially. Children don't go to school, parents can't see their parents or children, and there is no end in sight. Many of our political leaders want to use this time to score partisan points so they can either remain in power or gain power. The tribalism has become worse just at a time when a common crisis should be bringing us together, and there is no end in sight. The stain of racism has become more vivid during this time with the killing of black men by police in inexcusable circumstances. The reaction from many Americans, white and black, is to say no more, and yet still we have more cases of black men killed by police in circumstances where if the victims had been white, they would still be alive. And in spite of all this, when it comes to removing systemic racism from our society, there is no end in sight. This can lead to a feeling of great despair. Our lives severely interrupted, uncertainty everywhere, disruptions in parts of America with violence in some. The nation being asked to choose between safer neighborhoods or an end to systemic racism. A false choice, for sure, but nevertheless, it is the frame that is being constructed. And meanwhile, 1,000 Americans die of COVID every day, and 40,000 more are infected, with no end in sight. So it appears that we have to decide whether we will wait for our lives to return to normal, whatever that turns out to be, or accept the fact that with no end in sight, we have to do things within this time that we would rather not face. After all, it's hard enough not to go out without a mask, to have our children attending school from home, not seeing loved ones and staying home to avoid the contagion. I think that as we approach the new year, we have an opportunity to change the trajectory of our lives and of those around us. More importantly, we have the obligation to do so, each in our own way. As Hillel famously said, "If I am not for me, who shall be?" Which of course means we look after ourselves and our loved ones. Hillel then says, "If I am just for me, what am I?" His admonishment to look beyond ourselves has never been more relevant. And instead of just traditional acts of kindness and community involvement and support, these times call for actions which we have all too long ignored. By that I mean actively trying to connect with people with whom we disagree. If you want to know why we must do this, just look around. COVID has been politicized in a way whereby wearing a mask or not has become a political statement. Voting by mail or not has partisan significance. Supporting the president or not has disrupted families and long-time relationships. This is destroying our communities and with it the lives of many people. Hillel wants to know what we are if we don't change this. Hillel concludes with, "If not now, when?" We need to act now to change this. It requires many acts of tolerance, but it does not require accepting intolerance. It calls on us to learn to listen to each other and give others with whom we disagree the benefit of the doubt, that their motives may be as good as ours, that their point of view may have some merit, and we must learn to engage with each other with civility and empathy. Because if we cannot learn to do this with each other, we will live the rest of our lives caught in this cycle of desperation. No one should think that this is enough, hard as it is. We need to not just talk about how we find racism, economic inequity, religious and social bigotry abhorrent, but we really need to actively do something. Whether it is within our businesses, our social groups, or our community writ large, we have an obligation to do more than just talk. Tikkun olam, to heal the world, is our obligation as Jews. It is a lifelong journey, and as we try to cope with everyday life during COVID, we really need to have faith in ourselves and in our fellow Americans. I know how hard that can be. I've been involved in trying to enhance civil discourse among non-like-minded people for the last 15 years. But let me tell you that in spite of all we see around us that is dark, there are times when hope emerges, when people discover each other, not as opponents, but as fellow human beings who have more in common than different. We as a people agree on many things. There are common values that have made this country exceptional. This great, flawed, imperfect republic has served for many years as a shining light to the rest of the world. We need to act now to invite into our lives those who are different from us. If we can actually do this, we will discover that when COVID is no longer the defining part of our lives, when the end is in sight, we can realize in the midst of this misery, we have helped restore our community and our country to a place that we can be proud of. Because if we get this right, we will have learned to live with people that are different than we are. If nothing else, this time has taught us that there are people who don't look like us, they don't pray like we do. Their families are not like ours, and their opinions we do not share. But this is their country too. And the moral and ethical underpinnings of our nation, a pluribus unum, out of many one, can indeed become real. If we can make that idea resonate again throughout America, if we can finally make that possible for people of all races, religions, and opinions, we will have accomplished a great deal. As we begin this new year, in the midst of COVID and unresolved conflicts with no end in sight, let us commit ourselves to using this time wisely and empathetically. Find someone to include or befriend that is different from you. We can do this, and then this time of disruption will have helped us move forward and rediscover a community and a country that is indeed exceptional. This was where my talk was supposed to end. But with the news of the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I feel I must address two important ideas. First, she was a giant, though small of stature, who spoke truth to power as an advocate and then as a judge, demonstrated courage, insight, and humanity. We will not see the likes of her again. Secondly, her death has ignited yet another partisan firestorm. Perhaps just this once, 51 senators from both parties will announce that no consideration of any nominee at nation will take place until after the election, and then from whoever is elected. I'm not hopeful, which makes it even more important that each of us act responsibly so that our elected representatives are put on notice that we expect more from them. We embrace a return to a time where the end does not justify the means, where we look at each other as fellow citizens who respect our differences but revel in the idea, hope, and values that we share. Lashana Tova.
thank you for your heartfelt, important words and your important work. I will say a couple of things. In addition to that, it embodies one of the core Jewish values of machloket l'shem shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven. It is through the tension of respectful argument is the way we learn and the way we grow. And in that regard, you lead by example in that work. For me, someone who's been a full-throated supporter of Black Lives Matter for years, but who was appointed as a police chaplain for Kansas City, Missouri Police Department in March, I have brought this conflict home to roost internally over the last few months, and I'm struggling with it. But as I've told all of you in the past, one should always be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it's through that tension that we grow. And for opportunities to engage, to act, as Allan has appropriately exhorted us to do for this coming year, we do have opportunities through our social justice work, through the organizations that we have kind of singled out amongst others to give priority just so we can manage our time. Through our work, our ongoing work for years now in the community garden in Mannheim Park, and the important connection with that neighborhood and the people in that neighborhood, from that an outgrowth and a relationship with the Martin Luther King School, with the Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity, and with the Migrant Farm Workers Fund to help support asylum seekers, migrant farm workers who work primarily in Lafayette County. So with that, there are opportunities to act and opportunities to engage with people not like us, both religiously, racially, and just in terms of outlook and perspective on life. So with that, we will continue our service now on page 267 as we prepare for the next blowing of the shofar. God of remembrance, remember the covenant of our ancestors. We reaffirm it today. Remember we are a people of noble ideals. Help us to attain them. Remember all your people, all the nations on the road to peace. Bless their efforts. Remember with mercy the binding of Isaac, the sorrow of Sarah, Abraham's words, Hineni, here I am. Our memory fades, but you remember all that we have forgotten. Your presence is a throne where all things matter and nothing is lost. Baruch atah Adonai, Zocher Habrit. Blessed are you, Adonai. You remember the covenant. You remember us. We now hear the second blowing of the shofar.
Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah. Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim. Tekiah, Tekiah, Teruah. Tekiah.
Page 269. Today the world is born anew. The day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips and our heart's desire be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out Tekiah. Lovingly, favorably receive our prayers. Zichronot, remember us. We now continue on page 276. Hallelujah et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren le'amo, tehila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael am karovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We say our Torah is an Eitz Chaim, a tree of life. Ki Lekach Tov on page 277 leads us into Eitz Chaim. As we prepare for the third blowing of the shofar, we read on page 282. You revealed your glory, a presence in a cloud, and a people became holy when you spoke with them. Amid thunder and lightning, you made yourself known. With blasting shofar, you appeared. God, revealed to us and to our fathers and mothers before us, God of revelation. Play the song of our freedom on the great shofar. Let your banner fly over the gathering of our exiles. Bring back the dispersed. Let those who are scattered find their way home. Let joyful songs of Zion greet us in Jerusalem, your holy city, the place of our people's eternal happiness. Baruch atah Adonai, Shemea kol truat amo Yisrael, Barach Amin. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel, the third blowing of the shofar.
Tekiah, Shvarim Truah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Truah, Tekiah Gedolah.
We continue on page 285. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. Let the wishes of our lips, our heart's desire, be pleasing before you, God Most High. You are knowing and attentive, watchful and aware when we call out to Tekiah, lovingly, favorably receive our prayers of shofrot. We continue with Aleinu, page 286.
עלינו לשבח לדור הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שלא עשה כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונה. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטף שמיים ויוסף הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
Middle of 288.
ונאמר בחיי אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו 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 אחד.
As we approach Mourner's Kaddish, I ask you to both hold in your hearts, and if you so desire, we encourage you to put the names of those for whom you're observing a yortzeit on this day on the chat. And to their names, we add the name of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and all those who have died due to COVID-19. May their memories always be for a blessing. Kaddish Chateau Mourners Kaddish, page 292. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirete v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, Bagala v'zman kari v'imru, Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yidromam v'yitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitalev, Vitalal, Shemei, Dekudisha, Brichu, Leila, Leila, Mikol, Birkata, Vashirata, Tushbachata, Venekamata, Damiran, Be'alma, Vimru, Yehe, Shlama, Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chaim, Alena, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru, Oseh, Shalom, Dimromav, Yaseh, Shalom, Alena ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yoshvei tevel v'imru. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say,
Amen.
A few thank yous, some announcements. First, thank you to our speaker for this year, Ambassador Allan Katz, for very timely words, important words that we can send with us into the new year and take to heart and use for action. A thank you to our wonderful musicians, as always, to our music director, Laura Steinell, to Brendan Howard, Karen Ingebretz, and Will Perry for lending so much to our holidays. And I will tell you all again, with apologies for the part of your service that you missed this morning, go back and watch it. It's worth it just for the music. I want to thank our shofar blowers who have been at it for a number of years. John Greenwald, who will always be part of our Kol Ami community, but he's moved off to K-State to pursue music, which is wonderful. And to Dan Steinell, we thank you both for lending so much to our service. To the wonderful people at All Souls, to the tech team, Mark Gibbons, Lucas Teston, the Director of Worship Arts, Anthony Edwards, and to my colleague and friend, Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons. Thank you all so much for your generosity and your generosity of spirit. This has been a home for us for years and years now, and that it speaks to the wonderful relationship we have with All Souls, and we are grateful on an ongoing basis. To our Haftorah reader for today, Erica Clinton, thank you. Terry Smith, who did the content development for the PowerPoint, Brian Greenwald, who did the filming of the shofar service, and as always to our lay leaders, our Kol Ami Board of Directors, officers, all the dedicated volunteers, we thank you so much. More information about what's coming up on the schedule. Tomorrow at 10:30, we will be out at Frank Tice Memorial Park, aka Volker Park, between 47th and 49th on Oak for a very informal service starting at 10:30, followed by Tashlich. Bring your breadcrumbs to toss your sins away into Brush Creek, and followed by family programming, again led by Erica Clinton and Cheryl Gates. And then Yom Kippur, a week from tomorrow night at 7:30, and then Monday beginning at 10:30 will be a service with a study session at 1 on Zoom, followed by meditation on Zoom at 2:15, and then the Yizkor afternoon and concluding service at 4 o'clock. And also, we have, since the pandemic, started to do weekday morning services, just 15 minutes at 8 o'clock. It's been a wonderful way to connect for those who have participated, and I encourage you who have not tried it out yet to give it a try. And with that, I am pleased to turn it over to our board president and wonderful leader, Ellen Karp.
It's my pleasure to greet all of you who have joined us virtually this memorable and extraordinary holiday season. It's with deep gratitude that I want to thank everyone who has had a hand in keeping the Kol Ami community vibrant and together during these past months.
Thank you.
Doug Alpert, our rabbi, our pillar, who is the spiritual, intellectual, and activist center of our Kehillah, our community. Way beyond gratitude, I am personally in awe of the efforts from our board, our musicians, our guest speaker, our wonderful AV team at All Souls, our talented content creator, and with deep fondness and appreciation for the producer, director, planner, and ringmaster of these live-streamed Days of Awe, our own Laura Steinell, who also, in her spare time, just happens to be our inimitable music director. Believe you me when I tell you that we are all the beneficiaries of her spectacular talents and intense dedication. We simply would not be here now if it were not for her truly Herculean efforts. We are also very grateful to all of our members and the many friends of Kol Ami who have responded to our appeal for financial support to bring you these high holy day services under these wholly unanticipated circumstances. Your presence and your encouragement in this particularly trying year are so important to sustain our community. That said, it is both my responsibility and my privilege as president to ask those of you who have not as yet considered helping us underwrite the synagogue and our social justice efforts to do so now. You may donate on our website, kolamikc.org, or send a check to the congregation at 4501 Walnut, Kansas City, Missouri, 64111. You may not be aware that we are an all-volunteer synagogue. Our only staff consists of Rabbi Alpert and our music director, Laura. Everything else, believe me, everything else is accomplished through the time, tasks, and talents contributed by our members. Kol Ami's board works tirelessly because of their commitment to the Kehillah. It's important that we sustain that commitment by periodically renewing our leadership and involving more of our members to help build our future. If you, as a congregant or a potential future congregant, are interested in volunteering your time as a board member or in joining our worship or social justice committees or our book group or our musicians, we would welcome you. Additionally, we are always searching for social media and website expertise. You can simply email me at president@kolamikc.org or call the office number listed on our website to receive a board application or to let us know how you would like to help. Lastly, if you have attended more than one of our live streaming High Holy Day offerings and you are watching this pre-recorded message for a second, third, or possibly a fourth time, in the season of atonement, I apologize and ask your patience and forgiveness for the repetition. If you are hearing this message on Erev Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah morning, I wish you all a healthy and sweet 5781, Shana Tova. If you are hearing this message on Kol Nidre or Yom Kippur, I wish you an easy fast and a meaningful renewal of spirit for the new year. Gemar Chatima Tova. May you be inscribed for everything good. Thank you.
Ellen, thank you so much. And with a focus on celebrating the blessing of this day of Shabbat, this day of Rosh Hashanah, our new year, we conclude our service on page 294, Hayom Tamsenu.
Oh
Shabbat Shalom, a good Shabbos, and Shana Tova Umituka, a good year, a sweet year this year, 5,781. Thank you for joining us. Shana Tova.